for today's session of the Advocacy Leader Education Series, inviting legislators to your place of business. We are joined today by Adam Mellis, Director of Grassroots Consulting for Aristotle International, who spoke to you all back in March, as well as Amy Melli, Senior Vice President of Consulting for Aristotle. So Adam, Amy, and I sat down about a month ago and kind of mapped out a schedule for the program that would cover kind of the next 10 months or so. And we purposefully chose this date for this particular topic because the period when companies typically host meetings at their facilities with legislators is during the month-long August recess. And we wanted to give you all kind of, all the information you needed, well in advance, and make sure that you have, enough time to kind of construct your invites, talk to your colleagues, and hopefully, nail down the details for an event. I've said this before, and I know Adam and Amy will, reiterate this today in their presentation. But these facility visits or tours, whatever you want to call them, are truly, the most effective means of grassroots advocacy. I mean, more education and, more opportunity for engagement takes place at this meetings than any other type of event. I know some of you have experience with these types of meetings, and others of you are completely new to this. But know that, not only is this, obviously an incredibly valuable opportunity for us to educate legislators on our industry and our issues, but it also makes you look good, in the eyes of your boss, your employees, your members, customers, whatever. So, these, involve some planning on your part, but the benefits for you, your company, in the industry, I think, make it all very much worthwhile. And one thing I'll add is that, in today's presentation, you'll see some photos of past events we've helped organize. One of which occurred only a month ago. Shout out to fellow advocacy leader Diane Smith from Mail Solutions in Ramsey, New Jersey. But that's something I want to continue to do is prominently recognize our members who host these meetings. Whether it's on our website and our publications or through this program, we want to shine a light on those members who take an active role in advocacy. And I kind of see you all as prime, kind of well-trained candidates for doing just that. After this webinar, as always, we're happy to answer any specific questions you have or help you kind of walk through what you need to do to set up a meeting like this. But hopefully you'll be inspired to kind of take that next step and start to put what you've learned into action. So I'm sure everyone at this point is familiar with the question box on the right. We will get to all questions at the end. But now let me turn it over to Adam and Amy.
Thanks, David. It's a lovely day here with rain and gloom, so I hope some of you are at places that are sunny. David said this is one of the more effective ways to do in-district events, and what I'd like to touch on is a number of things. Some of this is going to look very similar to the webinar we did on setting up appointments with your member of Congress back in the district. And I know some of those meetings took place in the district office, and those are great. Going to repeat some of that information, but I'm also going to talk about sort of where there are certain differences when you're doing a facility tour and what other additional considerations you need to make. So let's move along here. And so I'm going to look at the big picture, look at sort of the basics of scheduling a facility tour, talk about what is it in it for the member of Congress, things that you need to do to prepare for the visit and what to expect, a few additional do's and don'ts, and then touch on some next steps. And hopefully everybody who's on this call will have a very successful facility tour before the year is out. Just as a reminder, I showed this slide in the last presentation I did for this group. If you notice, the most effective way to advocate to an elected official is with an in-person visit from a constituent. And this is really true. I mean, most decisions that are made in Washington are not very controversial. They're not decisions that somebody ran for office to decide on. And so they may not have an opinion of what that decision is. They may not even know that somebody in their congressional district has an opinion on what that viewpoint is. And so it's important for constituents, and constituents being voters, not necessarily voters for the person, but voters in general, to be vocal about where their viewpoints are. And so this is just a big fan of this slide because it really demonstrates sort of an impact that constituents have. The other is attending an event in the district or the state. And what I want to touch on sort of attending an event, and I'll reiterate this time and time again throughout the presentation. When you think of attending an event or doing a tour of something, there's a bit of psychology there in the sense that your attention is entirely on that one day or that one moment in that location. When constituent groups come to Washington to meet in a congressional office, often what happens is there's a lot of bells and whistles and people running around and votes taking place. And I remember one time being with a member of another association, and we went to the congressional office, and the staff person said, "Okay, great, we need to walk over to the Capitol." We walk over to the Capitol, then we're waiting 20 minutes, and then we get to meet with the congressman for 5 minutes. And then we're late for our next appointment, and the congressman was late for his next appointment. It was great to have the meeting, but it was one of many. When that member of Congress is instead spending 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours in one location, their attention is completely set on that location for the most part. And I think it's important to sort of understand why this is so important. And the other reason why it's important is that members of Congress, they get to take their picture with constituents, and believe it or not, they like that. It's one of those things where they get to not just know the constituent, but they get to know what the constituent business is, and the constituent gets a chance to get to know them. And so, as somebody is sort of looking for opportunities to meet with those constituents who they may not have ever met before. They may not go to the same church, they may not have kids who go to the same school, they may live in a part of the congressional district that's 20 to 30 to 100 miles away from where they're home. And so it gives them a real opportunity to understand what is happening in that congressional district. So this is a repeat from last time, but the other sort of part of the big picture is that Congress is spending more time away from Washington. The cost of elections have increased, and so the ability to connect with constituents and to talk about, as a member of Congress, about what good they're doing for the district becomes that much more important as they can talk to sort of the issues that matter to their constituents. In addition, more Americans are reaching out to members of Congress. Many of them do it by email or by phone, but there's a lot of people who are trying to say a lot of different things. And so the more memorable, the more quality of a delivery that your message gets, that your story is being told, your member of Congress will be able to then sort of get a better understanding of what is being said in the district by their constituents. So this is what I started talking about, setting up a meeting. Again, it's when you're setting up an event or a facility tour, it's the exact same way as you would for any other congressional meeting. You need to identify who the scheduler is in the congressional office and understand what their scheduling process is. Do they have a web form? Do they use a formal letter? Do you have to send a fax? Do you just do it over the phone? Is there an email? Every scheduler has their own process, and understanding what that process is and working through that process with that scheduler will help. 2 or 3 weeks before you plan things out, typically if it's just for a meeting, I would do additional time, maybe have it stretch out to be about 4 weeks to 6 weeks. If you're going to do a facility tour, there's a bit more to the scheduler's role when they're scheduling a meeting in the office, or when they're scheduling a meeting outside of the office versus in the office. And so what they need to do is account in travel time and account in what part of the district that member of Congress is in at the given time and moment. So with this kind of event where there's travel involved, you're going to want to make sure that you give them, the scheduling office, enough time so they can work into their schedule. And obviously make sure that you receive a confirmation that the meeting is going to happen, but also you're going to need to prepare a very detailed memo for that congressional office. And I'll touch on this memo in a second. But because the member of Congress is going to be traveling somewhere, they typically are going to ask their office to prepare some sort of briefing book for them. And so if you prepare a memo for the scheduler on the location and other details we'll get into, that information is going to go into the briefing. And it will certainly help advance not just the issues we want to talk about, but really help advance, the sort of the positive impact of the meeting. Now, that isn't to say the member of Congress will read the memo, but it is to say that at least it will help the staff as they're preparing for the meeting. And again, be flexible. If you're offered an appointment in the member's office, even though you're trying to do a facility visit, take the appointment in the member's office and then invite them one-on-one to visit your facility next time they're in that area, and take the opportunity to do that. So I mentioned the detailed memo. So certainly the memo is going to need to have your name and your contact information, and potentially someone else as a backup contact. Provide cell phone numbers and other information. This way, if the member of Congress is running late, if their schedule changes at the last second, the office has somebody to contact to sort of say, hey, just give you a heads up, this is when they're arriving. Try to identify individuals who are going to be attending any sort of formal meeting or that the member of Congress will be talking to. This doesn't mean an entire list of your employees. It means that if you and two other individuals who are working in the office are going to be spending most of the time with the member of Congress, those individuals should be identified. So saying, so-and-so, such and such, and David are going to show you around the facility where you'll have a chance to meet, some of our employees. Provide some information about the Auto Care Association. It's important to sort of reflect the fact that your business is a member of this association in the sense that you're not just speaking for what your business needs is, but you're really also speaking to what a whole industry views are on an issue. And talk about the reason for the appointment. If there's a specific reason, talk about it. But I would say it's important to stress that this is an opportunity to see a business in your district and to get acquainted with how we view sort of the needs of constituents. So the other section that you need to have the location. I would provide driving directions from the member's district office, even if they're coming from some other location. I think it's sort of a valuable, point of contact. Any sort of specific details. Do they have to go through a security gate? Is there a suite number? I had to, sort of a personal note, I had to go find an appliance parts store a couple of days ago, and part of finding the appliance parts stores, I had to drive through past a number of warehouses till I finally found it. Details like that are going to be important because then as the member of Congress is going to be showing up, and sometimes they show up late, sometimes they show up early, at least knowing that when they get there and there's a security gate, that they know who to ask for at the security gate, or when they get there and the buildings aren't very well marked, they know how to get to your building. And describe some detail about what exact business you're doing at your location. When David, Amy, and I met a month ago, we were sort of talking about the diversity of types of businesses that this association has. And so I think it's important. If your business is primarily doing parts distribution, talk about that in the briefing memo, saying that you are a parts distributor. Or if you're a garage, talk about you're a garage. Don't assume that that knowledge is there. I think it's important to give them an understanding. And then that way you can also talk about how your business fits into the overall industry. And then, if you have any sort of schedule, and what I mean by this is The member of Congress arrives, and they're going to go sit in a conference room for 5 minutes, and then they're going to tour this facility for the next 30 minutes, and then they're going to sit in the conference room for about 10 other minutes, trying to sort of outline that. If they're just going to go and they're going to just mostly sit in the conference room and discuss with you all what the business is and what the issues are, and you may want to outline that. It's in particular, especially if certain footwear may be required at the location. And then, I can't speak enough about these pictures, and David had touched on one fact about how it's a valuable resource for the association to really show that the association is active. It's also a valuable resource for that member of Congress. And I wouldn't do necessarily a group shot like this, but I would say to the member of Congress, if you're interested in getting a copy of the picture, we'd be happy to give it to you. They certainly won't mind that. Sometimes they may put it into a district newsletter and give that member of Congress an opportunity to say, hey, I'm out there with the people. So keep that in mind as well. The other sort of opportunity that you have with these pictures is it helps expand the discussion. For example, if your company has a company newsletter, and you can talk to the member of Congress saying, we want to put this picture in our company newsletter, but we're wondering if you'd be willing to provide a couple of paragraphs. And certainly there are some offices that will absolutely jump to that occasion because it gives them an opportunity to say a little bit about a business or an industry that reflects to not just the constituents that they met with on that given day, but for the whole company. So keep that in mind. A sample letter is very much the same. The one thing I'd specify is that when you're outlining the letter, make sure that you talk about where your business is. This is the sample letter I used in the previous webinar, so it still has the part about the appointment in the district office. It's more about invite you to visit with me at my business, and make sure that you specify your city. If you happen to be in a district that is located mostly in one city, just sort of specify what part of town. It just sort of provides some geographic context to the appointment. And then preparing for the meeting, and I can't stress this enough. Please let the folks in DC know. They will certainly have some updated information for you. They may notice that member of Congress that you're meeting with is on a key committee that they're trying to get some action out of. There's certainly a huge opportunity in having that discussion together. Read up on the Congressional Congressman's website, on their social media properties, look at the newspaper, try to sort of get an idea of what that congressman is currently doing, what views they're taking. And then a little bit different here is you need to prepare the location. And for starters, you need to let the employees know that this is happening. Not necessarily because you want them to stop working, more because you want to make sure that they're just sort of on notice that this is happening and that they're you're going to be talking about issues that are important to the business. Making sure that they're aware that this is happening gives them an opportunity to sort of understand what those issues are that are important to the business as well. And make sure that if the conference room is being used, that the conference room is clean and all those other sort of normal details. In preparing the schedule, we touched on this a little bit, but you also internally want to have a schedule so you know exactly where things are going to be at different locations. If you're in a small office setting, this certainly is not important. When you're notifying your employees, make sure you remind them that it's happening. It's important that they are aware. So what to expect? I'd say that you should expect a few things. You should expect the congressman to show up and be happy to be there and be happy to meet with different people. they're going to have a lot of questions. They're going to have questions about the business that you do. They're going to have questions about what kind of customers. They're going to have questions about the parts you have. They're going to have questions about how you can fix their car. They're going to have questions about any number of items. It's up to you to sort of help tell the story of what your company is. And by doing it at your office location, right, your business location, you have the opportunity to really sort of demonstrate, not just verbally, not just in a written way, but also visually. And so it's important to sort of, get a good feel on visually what you're doing in your place of work. Small talk is good, and some of these are repeats from the last one. It's important to be brief. This is certainly your meeting, but it is their schedule. So if you have some important issues to get to, build the connection with your member of Congress quickly, but then really start talking about the meeting. Now, tell the story of your business. Talk about the specific issues that you may be working on, and try to also talk about some of the issues in general as they relate to the association. This may be your congressman's first interaction with a non-lobbyist who's with the Auto Care Association, so it may be an opportunity for them to learn first time what the Auto Care Association is. And then listen. It's important because you'll get an understanding of what the congressman wants to know. Engage in a conversation. It's important to sort of, talk about differences when you have them, but also understand those differences from both sides of the perspective. If there's, for example, an issue where as you explain the issue, your member of Congress immediately says that they're opposed to it, ask them, what is the reasoning behind their opposition? Don't say that, oh, you're opposed to it, then why are you here? Just say, well, can you give us some insight on why there's opposition? Can you give us some insight on, is there anything that we can do to help you persuade you the other way? And certainly help make a conversation and not be a confrontation. And then answer the questions the best you can. If you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, what, I have to get back on that, but I certainly will. And then make sure that you do get back. Following up, it's important in May, especially if you're doing a facility visit, to send a thank you note to the member of Congress, just sort of thanking them to come to the facility. If there is a request that was made, making sure that whatever information in that request is followed up. If there are pictures that are taken, include the picture when you take it. It sends a thank you letter, by mail, by fax, or through the scheduler who you set the appointment up with, and then we'll get to the appropriate parties. Send a report to Washington, letting them know what happened and how the appointment went, any details in the conversations. And then, send a picture to the member's office, but also, send a little write-up for the company's communication. Send a thank you note to the employees, especially if they behave well. But more importantly, to say, hey, this was important. We had a chance to talk to the congressman about these issues are important to the business. Happy to discuss them with you more. But let them know that it was a good event and that things were positive. Do's and don'ts, very much the same as I wrote before. Prepare, relax, be flexible, listen, be respectful, share your expertise, and follow up. Don't talk about politics. This is not a campaign event that you're putting together. It may come up. I would strongly, try to focus on staying on the issue. Don't exaggerate. If something horrific is happening because of the issue that is going through, just telling your story is enough. And don't assume that you know what the member's opinion is. And certainly don't just talk about the weather. It's important to sort of talk about context, and it's important to talk about what the business that you're doing is. It's important to talk about a number of items that your member of Congress may only hear about, once or twice in the course of the year, but in this particular instance, you have their complete attention. So I think it's a real opportunity to take attention. Next steps, identify who the scheduler is and set up the visit and let David know, and remember to be the experts for your business. So with that, I don't know if there are any questions, but I certainly hope that this has helped everybody out today.
Thank you, Adam. Amy, is there anything you want to add, or do you want me to just get right into the questions and you can chime in then?
Yeah, I think we're ready to answer any questions that people might have. The only thing I would emphasize is that you guys are the experts in what you do, and I think that that's an important thing to remember. It can be a little scary when you're maybe meeting with a member of Congress for the first time or staff, but they know relatively little about your business, and I think that's why they're there, is to learn about what it is that you do and how that impacts their district.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, they love nothing more than touring businesses in their district, because, they get access to a lot of potential voters, many of whom are business owners and powerful within the community. So the first question, which is one that, we get a fair amount here too, which is, are politicians concerned about the owners or managers' political affiliations? So would a Democrat politician still be interested in attending a tour at a facility that was run by a fairly active Republican, or vice versa? I have some thoughts on this, but do you guys want to chime in first?
Yeah, I can certainly chime in. There are going to be, at times, there may be some concerns, especially if the owner of the facility was extremely active in supporting an opponent in the previous election. However, with that said, you're still a business in the district. You still have constituents in the district. And it gives that political office an opportunity to understand why you were in support of the opponent. And in these cases, really focus on the details of the questions, the issue. And I think that sort of goes where having the conversation is. I've been a political staff person in meetings with people who supported the candidate that the client I was working for had beat in the previous election. And, sometimes they can be kind of weird meetings. Other times, the client that I've worked for, the member of Congress I worked for, they looked at it as an opportunity to persuade that person to support them. And the fact of the matter is, these are individuals who are active in politics, and so I think it's important to understand that. I don't know, Amy, you have a different side of it.
No, I think you're right on. I mean, I worked for a member of Congress, a couple members of Congress for years, and we never considered someone's political affiliation when accepting or not accepting a meeting. It was constituents or constituents, and I think that's the key. Every office is a little bit different, but that has been my experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it'll only become a political meeting if you make it political. I mean, if you get a couple employees in there who start asking kind of very suggestive or politically focused questions, the member of Congress may respond and kind of feed off that. But if you want to keep things somewhat cordial and non-political, I mean, that's entirely in your power. So, it's and I've also seen a lot of instances where it's been that exact situation where I know for a fact that the business owner is a Republican, for instance, and he's meeting with a Democrat politician, and he goes in with kind of low expectations, not expecting that this guy's going to listen to what he has to say and care about the issues. But then by the end of the meeting, they have a great relationship, and I think they've both found an important ally across the aisle that they can go to. So I think I wouldn't consider these political things. I would consider them more just you're a congressman meeting with a constituent. No politics involved. The next question is, should a non-union facility be concerned about opening itself up to be a target for unionization through activities like this. So I guess meaning that, you know, if you give a legislator a tour of your factory or your facility, whatever like that, are they going to come back with, you know, trying to, you know, impose regulations or legislation to fix the situation in that factory? I don't know. That's kind of what I got from that question. What do you guys think?
That's an interesting question. In this instance, I would say the likelihood is not going to be very high, so long as the discussion with employees of the facility stay away from organizing issues. Now, with that said, I can't really think of an instance when I've dealt with that sort of issue. I think the only time I would be concerned about it is if the particular member of Congress has a reputation of protesting non-union facilities, and I'm not even sure if there are many of them left, but that would be sort of my only caveat to the rule.
I think that's a good point, Adam. And if whoever has concerns about that, it might be worth just sort of, you know, if there's a particular legislator that you're thinking about, just share that with David, and we can sort of handle that and see if there really is anything to be worried about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't immediately worry about something like this, but, you know, if it is a conversation you want to have, I'm happy to have that with you. Final question I see is, you know, attire for meetings. I mean, I think you got a, you know, somewhat of an idea from the pictures. But you know, generally I think with most of these, you know, the congressman may show up in a suit, he may show up in casual wear, but I think everyone should just kind of wear what they normally wear to the office, unless, you know, I mean, I don't know what do you guys think? I mean, not look like a schmuck, but, you know, I mean, you don't have to be business formal for these sorts of meetings.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to the congressman's office, so, I mean, they're going to your office, and the expectation is that you guys are working that day. So if you work wearing a logoed polo shirt and jeans, then, you know, wear what you normally work. Now, you may want to put into the memo to the scheduler, just so you know, you may want to say, by the way, you know, because of what we do here at the location, my employees, you know, we typically do not dress up in suits and ties. You may want to just sort of spell that out either in the memo or over the phone with the scheduler. So, but, you know, for the most part, they're not necessarily looking at what you're wearing to your place of business.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They may be looking to match what they're wearing to you more than vice versa, if, you know, if anything, since they're coming to you.
And I guess in terms of everything we talked about, does this also apply to local and state politicians as well?
Oh yeah, and because by and large, with few exceptions, their districts are even smaller geographically and or have fewer constituents, with some exceptions. I think there's a real opportunity not just to have a sort of a once or twice connection, but you know, multiple times a year connection, even a drop-in type relationships.
Yep. And yeah, and sometimes those relationships are some of the best ones to have. It's like a city council if you're in a city or something like that. You know, I know a lot of our members tend to be more involved at the local level as opposed to the you know, federal level. And we're obviously trying to get them more involved at the federal level, but I think kind of as is with these small businesses, it's a good connection as well. And we'll get into more of that kind of, you know, more localized advocacy, I think, at future education sessions. But I think all the rules definitely still apply at that level.
Yeah, I would just touch on this, David, and you know, I used to work for the mayor of a fairly large city in California, and you know, the mayor was very well connected with the businesses that took the time to get to know him, and he knew what a lot of those businesses did. He knew the positives of those businesses. He also knew the negatives of those businesses, not necessarily because of, you know, what that business owner told him, but sort of, you know, in talking to other people in the community. And so I think it is important at that local level to really sort of let those local politicians know who you are and make sure you have the opportunity to tell your story.
Yep. So final question, I guess, which actually maybe only I think only applies to one of our advocacy leaders who has actually already held a facility visit last month. But what's kind of the next step after that? I mean, like, once one of these meetings ends, I know with the meeting, before this, it was okay, we'll come visit our facility next time, and they say great, but once you've had them visit the facility, what's kind of the next step? Do you just kind of wait until the next year and do it again, or do you say, hey, I'll come by the office again sometime and update you on our issues? I mean, it's obviously important to keep the relationship going, but what would you see is the next kind of logical step after a meeting like this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say there are a number of opportunities. Some of them are campaign related. So if it's a politician that you particularly like and you have a particularly good relationship with, you may want to reach out to that politician's campaign committee, which is separate from the official office. Others are related to attending that member of Congress's town hall meetings if they host town hall meetings. It gives an opportunity for you to say hi, but it also gives an opportunity for that member of Congress to potentially recognize you and your business to groups of constituents. It does happen. It certainly can happen when there's a lot of positive things going on in town hall meetings, which doesn't always happen, but it is an opportunity. I don't know, Amy, if you want to add to this.
No, I echo what Adam said.
Yeah. No, that's definitely good advice. So with that, thank you to everyone who attended today's call. Let me just quickly add that our next webinar will be Thursday, July 30th, also at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be another issue briefing where you'll hear from my colleagues Paul Fiore and Andres Castrione. Paul handles our small business and tax issues, so he'll most likely talk about probably tax reform, healthcare, labor issues, and then Andres is our international trade counsel, so he'll talk about free trade and other international initiatives we're working on at the association. So like I said, again, thank you to everyone who joins today. If you have any specific feedback or questions that come to you after this, just shoot me an email. I will be sending out the recording probably early next week, as well as these new invite templates that Adam and I are working on for these sorts of meetings. And have a great rest of your week and weekend. Take care, guys.